Upstairs at Froelich, show 418, reel 1.
We're gonna actually watch the final 2 Die Hard movies tonight and tomorrow.
No, have fun with that train wreck.
I never got around to seeing them before. I think I might have. It just might have been. I mean, I saw it. I remember. I didn't see Die Hard when it came out, and I did see Die Hard 2 on cable, and then I saw Die Hard 3 in the movies several times. But then after that, so many years had passed, and I just never got around to it again. It just didn't seem like it was.
Well, I saw the last 2 in theaters back, when they both came out, and
they didn't seem relevant anymore.
I hate to say the only reason I saw the 4th one in theaters because a really cute chick went with me,
Really?
and her last name was McLean.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Okay, so like that was reason enough right there. But man, I fucking hated that movie. And A Good Day to Die Hard, the less I say about that, the better, just because it's R-rated. Doesn't make it any better. It's actually worse than A Good Day to Die Hard.
Gotcha. You know what the funny thing about The Last Boy Scout is? With a very simple rewrite, it could have been a Die Hard movie very easily.
It could have been. I mean,
and I think that's what inspired them when they made Die Hard with a Vengeance, because they gave him a partner, right?
Yeah, that movie was riddled with production problems. Like the fact, I mean, dude, and also it underperformed. Like they expected it to be this gigantic fucking hit.
Well, this was around the time when Bruce Willis's star was starting to descend, because Hudson Hawk had come out and Bonfire and all that.
Well, Shane Black wrote it, and Warner Brothers paid a shitload of money. Well, I shouldn't say.
Yeah, what do you got? You got like $5 million.
Warner Brothers. It was Joel Silver and Geffen. Paid a bunch of money for that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it totally. I mean, it made money, but it didn't, go nuts. It was.
It's just Regan and Bromwell didn't really like it that much because they saw it as very misogynist. And I'm like, okay.
Well, dude, I watch it let me tell you something. Like, even though I think the movie is very underwhelming, like, I watch it every now and again because it does have some good dialogue. Like, of course, my favorite line.
There's some funny lines in there.
My favorite line. Holy shit, we're getting our asses kicked by the inventors of Scrabble.
Yeah. That's like apropos of nothing, too.
That right there.
Actually, I love when his daughter says, "Eat shit, you redneck bastard."
Yeah, eat shit, you redneck bastard.
I was like, God, she sounds like my daughter. Yeah, but
I said the movie has its moments, but you compare it to Shane Black's other body of work, I would rather watch
Didn't he write? He wrote The Long Kiss Goodnight. That was a good one.
I would rather watch The Long Kiss Goodnight. That is the better.
That's another movie that they really didn't do that well. I really enjoyed it. I saw that in the theater, actually.
I saw that when it came out, but it did underperform a little bit. But I think that was because New Line didn't promote it enough, and it came out in a stacked fucking summer.
New Line,
it came out in a really stacked summer, and that was a movie that found its audience over time.
That was New Line before the purchase, right?
Or
before the merger.
I think it was post-merger. I think it could have
still
been
had the old logo, though. I mean, there was one.
It could have been around the Ted Turner New Line.
Yeah, because New Line Cinema starts off as this tiny little thing, and they're very small. I mean, they're small, like Miramax small. They're like Canon small, but even smaller than that because the budgets of their movies were even smaller. I mean,
well, right, what they did back in the 70s and 80s. I mean. We can talk about the history of New Line and how it goes into this. It's like New Line started as a small film distribution company. They didn't make their own movies; they just distributed stuff.
Yeah, they acquired them.
Yeah, and the first, they did college tours and stuff like that. But their biggest acquisition, was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Mm-hmm. That was their big acquisition. Now, unfortunately, they don't retain the rights to that anymore, but they did have it.
Wasn't that Bryanston that made that movie?
Yeah, Bryanston, the porno
company.
I shouldn't say the porno company. Yes, it was Butchie Perino. The company that did Deep Throat was
basically,
the one that,
money laundering, mafia money laundering company.
Yeah, and they were the ones nobody from Texas Chainsaw got paid,
right?
Because of that, and luckily Bryanston went out of business. New Line was able to get the distribution rights, and Toby Hooper and the rest of the cast and crew finally got paid.
Yeah.
And that was what started lining New Line's pockets a little bit. We flash forward a couple of years later, they start doing some John Waters movies. John Waters, of course, had already made his bones with Pink Flamingos.
Right.
They now own the rights to that through Fine Line. But then you have Polyester, Desperate Living, a couple of other movies I can't remember. I think it was
all of that
Polyester
kind of
and
actually
Desperate
connects
Living.
to Nightmare on Elm Street because of Rachel Talalay. Rachel Talalay was an employee for New Line at first and was one of their production people, gophers and everything. She worked her way all the way up to director, but she worked as a production assistant on all of these John Waters movies. You can see her name in the credits. So interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, it took them a while before they struck iron because there were a couple of movies they made that did slip under the radar. Like, other than the John Waters flicks, you had the movie Extra, if you've ever seen that movie.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of rights issues, we can't get that over here anymore. You had to buy it from Europe. New Line had money in it, but it was like a New Line / British co-production, and the Brits have the rights to it and we don't, and you had to buy it on Blu-ray in Europe.
Right.
And then of course the last big one before it all comes full circle was a little movie called Alone in the Dark. It had all the old actors like Jack Palance, Martin Landau. You know, it was a run-of-the-mill slasher. It wasn't anything great.
Well, it was a very early slasher film with an A-list cast. Jack Palance, Martin Landau, and Donald Pleasance are considered A-list actors. Oh, you know, also being directed by Jack Shoulder. And Jack Shoulder figures also into the second Nightmare movie, and he's also a Facebook friend. I have to point that out too.
I think I have him as a Facebook friend.
Yeah,
but,
he posts. He posts very often.
Yeah, Jack Shoulder made some good movies. Man.
He's a fine director. Unfortunately, he was handed that mess that we talked about. We talked a little bit about last time with Walter Hill, that Supernova movie. He directed some of that movie too.
Terrible movie. Terrible fucking movie.
And he did direct a good portion of it. I think after Walter Hill left, because they went through like 3 or 4 directors, and then Coppola was brought in to.
Yeah, it was mainly Walter Hill, Coppola, and Jack Shoulder on that movie. When we get to what we now know as the house that fucking Freddy built, both at the time, New Line and Wes Craven were both desperate.
There's also Evil Dead though, because.
That was they
acquired
they
acquired it, but they acquired it because if you know, in Bruce Campbell's book he has a photocopy of the check they got from New Line for $175,000. I'm not really sure what the budget on Evil Dead was because they go back and forth on it. Sometimes they say it's this amount, sometimes they say it's that amount. In addition to the box office receipts, like if you go to Wikipedia right now, it'll tell you that Evil Dead made like between $20 million and $500 million. They don't really know, and then they don't know.
That was way back before. It's like a little movie like that didn't have like, you know, it wasn't in Variety or anything.
But it did. People knew about it. It had a real grassroots thing going on, and that's the thing with New Line. These movies were not promoted because they didn't have that kind of advertising budget going on at the time, and they're slasher films. And Robert Shaye tends to be one of these. He's one of these real promoting guys. He like goes out there with the movie. He's like, you know what, like Weinstein was, or like Golden Globers were at the beginning. I mean, he just went and peddled these movies. He pimped them on the street, you know. He would take them to cons. I mean, that's so weird. He would take slasher films to Cannes for the Cannes Film Festival, and they would be up there with other bigger movies, you know.
I totally understand why. I mean, dude, he was touring college campuses with some of those movies that he did. I mean, Evil Dead was a college campus film. So was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So were the John Waters flicks. Yeah, this is 3 years removed from Evil Dead.
That was actually three of those John Waters films did not get major releases. They got college releases. They were released at colleges, so you had to go to a college to say. I remember, I don't know, maybe it was my mother used to talk about how she went when it came to like the real up and coming films. You didn't go to like the movie theaters back in the 70s and the early 80s. You went to colleges to see them.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know, but these days. I can't even imagine them doing anything in college that's fun anymore, you know?
I can't either. College is just so weird these days.
Yeah, Jesus. Like, I think that's where my mom saw Clockwork Orange. The first time she saw Clockwork Orange was not in a mainstream movie theater. She saw it in a college.
For comparison's sake here, I saw a couple of movies in college, like literally in college myself, but they were... Like we saw Bruce Almighty in college while it was still in theaters, and then then the Italian Job was still there. Like the Italian Job. The film studios actually gave our college prints to watch, and we had a projector in an auditorium to watch. So I guess it's not that far-fetched. Yeah. I mean, I guess I guess I am part of that generation where that actually fucking happened.
A little bit, yeah.
Hooray for me. Now, when it comes to where New Line's at and where Wes Craven's at in 1984, both are, I guess I was going earlier, both were desperate because, you know, Wes Craven, he had a couple of hits with, you know, The Last House on the Left.
Just these scandal-ridden movies, these controversial movies.
And The Hills Have Eyes. But then, like, you look at his filmography after that, you got a couple of movies, and even Swamp Thing at this point, it did good. He wanted to make like his ultimate slasher movie.
Swamp Thing was awesome. Swamp Thing is a favorite. It's a favorite movie of mine. I love that movie. But yeah, if you look at it, actually his oeuvre here, he started off with The Last House on the Left. I have a feeling that after that movie came out, he was considered unhireable because that movie was extremely controversial. There were people that were calling for it to be like burned. He got death threats, and we were talking about some filmmakers get death threats.
Yeah.
Like on Sunday, not even as a joke, I'm not even joking here, but on Sunday I decided, let's watch Last Temptation of Christ. Because I haven't seen it in years, and I have the Criterion Blu-ray, I bought it, and we watched it, and this is a movie that they tried to kill Scorsese because he made this movie. So, nowadays, you understand now, particularly, why film studios want to play it safe. They don't want death threats anymore because people are really fucking angry these days. It's like you said a couple of weeks ago, drinking the Haterade. Everyone's drinking the Haterade. And can you imagine a movie like Last House on the Left being released today? I saw the remake. The remake was terrible. It took away everything. Just like they remade another horror movie that was extremely frightening back in the day, but is not anymore. I think it was When a Stranger Calls. Yeah.
Well, that was PG-13 garbage is what they did. I'm in the camp to where, as far as remakes go, Last House is actually decent because
no, it's too polished. It's too polished.
Well, you're right. It's absolutely polished. But what saves it for me is I love the actors in the movie. I like Garrett Dillahunt as Krug. I like Tony Goldwyn as the dad, and I fucking whoever, I can't remember who played the mom. Was it Monica Potter played the mom?
Yeah.
I love the actors in that movie. Okay, so and Garrett Dillahunt, he did it for me. I really like him. He's a funny fucking guy.
Yeah, but it's just too clean and too pretty. And that, the first Last House on the Left felt like a snuff film you were watching. It felt like it was made in a very, like you said, grindhouse way. It looked really dirty. And it was, oh my God, when I saw it, I wanted to die. That was another movie that I picked up at Kim's because you couldn't find it on video anywhere because people refused to carry it.
You want to know what's funny? Dude, the video store I told you about, Lion Video, the one that we had, they fucking had it.
Mm.
They had the old big box fucking VHS tape.
That's
man.
what we
they
had.
It.
That's where I found it, the big box. It was absolutely. I mean, I was in shock watching it because I felt like I was watching something that looked so real. Like, okay, there's a few movies like that just nauseate you, and then you get to the end of it. Like Bloodsucking Freaks is one I have. I think I still have that down. I have a VHS.
Yeah, Bloodsucking Freaks is alright. But the thing that always got it for me about Last
it was
House
torture
on the
porn
Left,
of the 70s, is what it was.
Yeah. The thing that always got it for me is Roger Ebert fucking loved that movie.
Which one?
Last House on the Left. Roger Ebert fucking
well, I
loved
think
that.
I think Ebert appreciate because Ebert is a weird one too. He enjoyed Devil's Rejects too. He said this is a movie I really liked, but I can't recommend it to my friends. And I understand completely because if you go around recommending shit like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, it's a great film, but you can't recommend it to people because they think you're fucking out of your mind.
Well, it just shows they weren't pretentious, and neither one of those two.
Siskel was a tad pretentious,
a little bit, but
tad.
you see,
and he had less of a sense of humor than Ebert because if you read Ebert's writing,
bullshit. The movies, two movies that Siskel liked that Ebert did not like: Parents and The People Under the Stairs.
Okay, that's
okay.
I'd love to. We talked about The People Under the Stairs, but
right.
That I don't understand that one myself. Siskel, what's that old saying? A broken clock is right twice a day. He was the broken clock, okay?
Yeah, but then adversely, we've already talked about Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah.
Ebert loved it. Mm-hmm. Siskel fucking hated it.
Yeah. My thing is that Ebert, I always kept his books. I always got his home video companion, and I still have them down in the basement. No space anymore to have books around here, but I learned a lot about movies. Danny Peary, too, Guide for the Film Fanatic. I learned a lot about movies early on in my early teens reading those books. And what's the other one? The Video Video Hound.
The Video Hound movie guy.
Yeah, I had that book too. And I learned a lot about these crazy ass movies. Like Last House is one of them. So when I saw Last House, I felt like it was like really dirty, filthy, kind of a horrible movie. But it did have at the end, when the parents figure out who the people are that are in their house, and they fucking turn into, they get like, they... When
she bites his dick off right there, all bets are off, man.
To torture and kill, and it's like, whoa! You understand where this is coming from. And The Hills Have Eyes. The thing about Wes Craven, his brand of horror always had a thing.
Realism.
Well,
a documentary feel.
Not just realism. It was he's college educated, right? He's got a kind of a literal mind about him, so it's kind of like intellectual thinking man's horror films kind of a thing, but giving you exactly what you want when you're watching it, and also humor. I mean, this is like a big thing with Wes Craven. Noticing it these days after so many years watching his stuff on cable is that he always had a sense of humor about him. I wrote this article that finally got published recently. It was about the urban horror and basically the difference between People Under the Stairs and Get Out. And the reason People Under the Stairs is such a much better movie because it does better. It makes a better social comment and it's funnier than Get Out.
Oh yeah, because it's a Reagan era social commentary movie. That's why. I
mean, I have to get all Andrew Dice Clay. I have to go, no. Oh. And when I saw Hills Have, my God, Hills Have Eyes was fantastic. I also have to say, the remake was not bad either. The remake was pretty good.
Yeah, because the remake had a good director, Alexandre. I'm not going to pronounce his name because it's French was.
Aja, stunningly beautifully shot. Because they shot it on, their set was basically one of those nuclear test places, you know? That was pretty awesome. Well,
yeah, I guess that's
but
the whole thing.
But the original is so good too. That's the thing about Wes Craven. I think his hallmark is that there are victims, but they defend themselves and they get revenge and that kind of stuff. You know.
I guess that's a good way to put it.
That's what Nancy is in Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's what Nancy is in Nightmare on Elm Street.
And she's like one of those again in the face of all these people who complain that there are no strong female characters. Nancy is a strong female character in this movie.
Yeah, she's not your dumb bimbo, but then there were already strong female characters in horror movies. I mean, of course, the granddaddy of them all was fucking Halloween. I mean, okay, I should back that up a little bit. Halloween was not the first fucking slasher. Let's just be bluntly clear on that. But it was the first.
Well, you had
it was the first popular slasher. Okay.
I don't know. You can't call these early Wes Craven movies slasher films, though, can you?
Well, no, they aren't slashers. I mean, Last House on the Left is more of a horror. Okay, we can call them horror, but they are horror thrillers. I mean,
exploitation horror, I would say.
Exploitation horror, because you have one movie about a group of criminal crazy idiots, then you have another film about a cannibal crazy family. Yeah. But then we got to flash forward just a little further, and we have to talk about Deadly Blessing,
right?
Which I have never seen.
I've seen it. It's a good movie actually. And there's a shot in there that he duplicates for Nightmare on Elm Street. Instead of Freddy's claws coming out of the tub, it's a snake coming out of the tub between this woman's legs, and he does the same shot. But it's a great movie about a kind of Amish cult thing, and then a killer running around. And it's got Maren Jensen from the original Battlestar Galactica, one of my crushes back in the day, and Sharon Stone in a very early role. This is probably right before Sharon Stone was almost about to retire because she wasn't getting any roles. She had done, before that, she had done Woody Allen's Stardust Memories. She's in it for like 5 seconds. And then she does this movie. Then kind of disappears. And then she picks up in the Cannon movies, those Alan Quartermain. And then she becomes popular later with, what was it? Total Recall first.
Well, no, actually, before that, she did Above the Law and Action Jackson.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Action Jackson.
She got notices on Above the Law. Because Above the Law did some decent business, and she got notices.
Right.
And that's what got her Total Recall. And then after that, that's what she did Basic Instinct.
Yeah.
So there you go. But anyway, I need to watch Deadly Blessing. That's a movie I've never seen. Then after Deadly Blessing, he gets
It's a good one.
Swamp
Ernest
Thing.
Borgnine's in that one, too.
Oh,
Cabby. Yeah. Except he plays like the leader of this Amish type cult. You can't call it Amish because, the Amish are famously litigious. They'd sue him. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Siskel once said, the Amish are the type of people that aren't going to watch that movie because how would they know about it? They're not supposed to watch movies.
Yeah.
So you can.
And
the Amish community can't. That's like Ebert said it when they reviewed Kingpin, or Siskel said it's like you can make fun of the Amish because they're never going to see it.
Yeah.
But after that, and we talked about Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing played on cable.
That was the closest he ever got to a studio picture at the time, and it was like a small studio because it was Avco Embassy.
It was studio money though. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Avco Embassy money, and then you had a good producer in Michael Uslan who eventually did do the Batman.
And Ben Melniker, both of them produced it. And they did this a couple of months before Creepshow. So they were doing the whole comic book aesthetic for the movie. So it's interesting to know which came first exactly, who had the idea first. Was it Romero? Was it Craven?
But then
both movies have Adrian Barbeau in them.
Yeah, both movies do. It makes you wonder. But then they were both distributed by two different companies. I mean, you also have to remember, Creepshow is not a Warner Brothers project. It was picked up by Warner Brothers.
It was Laurel
Yeah, it was all like Creepshow was completely independently financed. I mean, yeah, it had a backer in Salah Hassanein that was Romero's guy who backed all his movies, and Richard Rubinstein, everything like that. But Warner Brothers picked it up after it went to Cannes. You talked about a film festival. Creepshow played at Cannes.
Yes, it did.
And it got picked up. And it got picked up at Cannes by Warner Brothers. They signed the check right away.
That's right.
They had no problem picking it up. And then Swamp Thing. I mean, that one at least had a studio that got into theaters. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah, so that movie did make money.
But then,
that was the shot in the arm that Wes Craven needed because he finally had a hit under his belt. He finally had a movie that made some real money for a studio.
It did. It was still very low budget, though. All these movies were very low budget until probably the Scream movies, I would say.
Well, he started yeah.
Yeah, it was the Scream movies. After Scream became an enormous success, they threw money at Scream too, and that was like the first taste of really big budget movie. Because even as far as Vampire in Brooklyn, that was a low budget movie, but it was mainly just Eddie Murphy collecting a paycheck and getting out of a Paramount deal.
I guess, but
New Nightmare was $8 million. People Under the Stairs was $7 million. $6 million actually. Shocker was, the budgets are a lot smaller as we go to, and Nightmare on Elm Street's budget was it was 1.8, and it was like the most profitable movie of its time at the time.
And this was a movie that needed, I've always loved this because it's one of the few times you ever hear about it. New Line was in such dire straits at this time for a hit. They had to partner up with a home video label just to get the movie made.
That's why I have it's weird when I hear about Evil Dead's budget because it doesn't look like it cost how much it cost. And then they got this big check. When you get like a big check from somebody, like half of that goes to taxes. So it's kind of weird. And then it seemed like I don't know why they were saying it made so much money when I don't think it honestly didn't. Because the Evil Dead had problems with the ratings for some reason I can't figure out.
Well, yeah, it was released unrated. I mean, from what I understand.
And you can't release a movie unrated unless it's in, Pussycat theaters and stuff like that. And it's not really that kind of a film. And also, yeah, it looks, when you look at it from the outside.
The 80s was a weird time because you could do that shit. You have to remember, Romero started doing that in the 70s. Like Dawn of the Dead was released without a rating. Day of the Dead was released without a rating.
Right.
Henry was released without a rating, and these movies all went to theaters.
Right.
But it's just you had to find them. That was the thing. You had to find them. I don't understand how Dawn of the Dead made the money it made playing in unrated theaters, whereas Day of the Dead totally flopped.
Well, it might have been that Rocky Horror thing. You know how the movie flopped originally and then became this huge hit as it played midnight movie theaters, right? And now they swear that the Rocky Horror's receipts add up to about $500 million at this point, right?
The movie is still in rotation.
I mean, Pink Flamingos is still in rotation, as is Eraserhead. These movies continue to make money. People love to see them on the screen. They're like purists, so they don't really go for that digital projection stuff. So you're seeing prints. Sometimes you're seeing prints.
Yeah, good luck finding a fucking theater. I mean, I thank God you live in New York, I live in Chicago, because it's probably somewhat easy to find a theater that still plays, film prints every now and again.
Yeah, but the theaters are hard to get to, though. The big theater, we have the big, what is it? We have the Regal Kaufman, which is 14 theaters, and they're all digital, and a lot of them are crap. The best digital projection you're going to get are with the very new releases on the big screens, that kind of thing,
Yeah, we have Marcus Theater up by me, and the digital projection is really good. We have, the loungers and everything. We've got everything out by us. We don't, but that's funny. You said you have a Regal. We don't have Regal out here.
Yeah, it's a different kind of thing, because also they have these theaters where you can select your seats. I don't know if they're doing it at your theater.
Well, yeah, they do that at all the theaters out here. All we do.
They have this new experience where they have more comfortable chairs or something.
Yeah, all our theaters out here are AMC theaters. We have Marcus because they're a Midwest company. And then the other one that we have, but we barely have, a new Cinemark. We have them.
Heard of them, yeah.
We have the nearest
a smaller
Cinemark
chain.
Theater. Yeah, they're 30 miles down south.
Did you hear about what AMC is doing? They're going to try and charge you tier pricing now for better seats.
Yeah, whatever. They can kiss my ass.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay, so if you have to
anymore.
get a seat right up against the screen, you don't have to pay as much. So, what's the perfect spot? That's sort of weird too, because people have various sight issues and they have to wear glasses. So sometimes they want to sit up closer or they want to sit much farther away. So what are you charging exactly? What kind of?
Maybe like $2 more per seat. I don't know.
It's just a way to scam people out of this money again. They're just trying to get money.
Hey, I'm a working stiff. I don't get to go to the theater as much as I'd like to. I already have my list of movies down that I'm seeing at theaters this year. One is The Flash, one is Guardians of the Galaxy, and the other is going to be, and I already told my wife about this, Talking Heads Stop Making Sense.
Oh, okay.
Because that's getting a new 4K restoration. It's going to be out sometime this year. And I already told her, hey, I know you don't want to go see this with me, but I'm just letting you know I'm going to see this in a fucking theater. just to say I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back to, what is it, Nightmare on Elm Street? Yeah.
So
it's one of them weird things where I love the opening credits.
I know you didn't see it in the theater, obviously.
Of course not.
Now, you probably saw it on cable then, right?
Believe it or not, no, video.
No, you just rented it on tape?
Back in the 80s, nobody really played. Okay, the only channel that played Nightmare on Elm Street films was, I think it was Showtime. Nobody out here was playing them on.
In the 80s?
Yeah.
No. The first time I saw Nightmare on Elm Street was because a friend, my friend Tina, who lived in North Philly, had HBO. She taped it off of HBO for me. But that was the first one. I'm not sure about the second. The second one I saw first, actually, because the Colonial Theater was running a double or triple feature of horror films, and Nightmare on Elm Street was part 2, Freddy's Revenge, was on the list for the movie. So we saw that first, actually, and then later on, my friend Tina taped it for me and gave it to me on VHS, and we watched it then. So I actually saw the first movie second.
I'm trying to honestly remember because,
but it was definitely HBO that first time.
Well, I remember Nightmare on Elm Street 5 playing on Showtime.
Probably there were different companies that were coming into when we get to 3, 4, and 5. I think those movies. I do not think they were on HBO at all. I think they were on Showtime. I think there was a deal in place because there were some other companies that were coming into it. I think New Line had been infused with new money at that point. By the time we get to Dream Warriors.
Oh yeah, because Dream Warriors. That was their biggest hit at the time was Dream Warriors. But.
Yeah, but think about actually the budget for Elm Street, the first one was $1 million. It made 57, which means it almost made like 50 times its budget back, which made it really huge. Probably didn't even play in like 1,000 theaters. Probably played in like maybe 400 at the time because it was New Line.
They had to split the profit. You see, I was getting to that point. They had to split the profits with Media Home Entertainment on that one. Because Media was the up-and-comer, home video label around that time.
Right.
They specialized in the, slasher genre, that kind of thing. But they actually put up some of the money.
They had the first 5 movies, right?
Yes.
And then after Freddy's dead, I don't know, New Line had become a big... That's what I was saying around the time that, I don't know, Media disappeared, New Line.
Well, yeah. Well, what ended up happening was after 1990... I believe 89, let me rephrase that, in the 90s, Media ended up partnering up with 20th Century Fox for some distribution on a few movies, but then they totally went under by like 91, 92. And when Freddy's Dead came out, that's when they had a deal with Columbia TriStar at the time. Because the original Freddy's Dead came out on the Columbia TriStar label.
That's right.
On that video.
Yeah.
And what is it? Right after that, like when New Nightmare came out, it was on Turner Home Entertainment label. Like most of the other New Line movies that came out were on Turner Entertainment label around that time.
I'm checking. I want to see if they have the original. If they have, oh come on, they want $3,000 for a original Media Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and it looks like it's damaged.
Yeah,
and it's in one of those stupid little plastic boxes too.
Yeah, it's because it's one of the dude.
There's another one that's in better shape. That's $4.99.
I didn't pay anything for that. I have let me go off here. I have all the original Media tapes of Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm not talking about the shitty Video Treasures ones from the 90s after Media folded and they picked them up. I have original Media fucking Nightmare on Elm Street tapes.
You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1 through 5, I have all original Media tapes. Even my Media tape of part 1 is autographed by Heather Langenkamp.
Cool.
And I found that in a thrift store for 50 cents.
Did you meet her?
No.
Oh,
I found
wait
it
a minute. Wait a minute. Froelich! You went to a fucking thrift store and got it for 50 cents, and it was signed by Heather Langenkamp?
Yep.
What the fuck, dude?
Yep.
Get out of here.
I wish I could.
Get
I
out of
can't
my
get
house,
of
out
here.
the window right now. They have, yeah, they have. This is like I just $12,000.
These are all sealed tapes, man.
Let me see.
Look,
I don't
don't
know.
look at
This
new
might be
tapes.
sealed, but it might not because you can fake. And it's in this plastic case, and it's an 85 near mint plus box 85 seal 80, whatever the fuck that means, and it's $12,000. Would you ever, even if you? I mean, I always think of feeding my family first. I think if I buy this, my family doesn't eat.
Well, let me at least say this much: my copies of 1 and 2, they are not original media. They are media, but they are second pressing or second run media.
You've got
The very first media tapes of 1 and 2. Remember the flap media tapes?
Yeah,
Mine are not flap; they're complete slip. Because 1 and 2, when 1 and 2 came out
just a plain old
originally,
slip
they
case.
were, they were not hi-fi. They were just mono tapes.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, they were mono. They had the old, you had to open up the bottom flap to get the tape out. They were just mono tapes. But then in '87, when Dream Warriors came out on home video, they re-released 1 and 2 on video with hi-fi soundtracks, and they were in regular slip boxes.
Gotcha.
Those are the ones that I have. My 3, 4, and 5 are all original first-run media. They are not video store copies. There is no stickers on any of these tapes.
Right.
They are all original. They are all minty fresh.
Minty.
So, hooray for me!
I have
like
to.
My,
I just want to
Halloween
give.
is not even. My Halloween is not even an original media. MEDA, the original media. I have a
named after his wife, right?
Yeah, named after Charlie Band's wife. Yeah, I have like an 88 copy of Halloween, or no, not an 88. I have an 85 Halloween that has a flap on it, but is a hi-fi tape.
I have a couple of Halloweens. I have a one of these bullshit Video Treasures clamshell things that they claimed was way better than except it was a piece of shit because Video Treasures is terrible, just like Good Times basically. And then I had this. And that was a letterbox version of it. I think that was their big catch.
Well, that was actually a decent tape. Like
no, the sound quality's terrible. It's still terrible. Okay. It's still fucking terrible. That. Video Treasures is always fucking terrible for me, and it's the same as I don't know why you always had to crank up those Good Times and Video Treasures things to 8 just to hear anything, and it was very hissy. They were terrible.
Because they were mono, because they were fucking mono, they were LP mono. That's why.
And then I have the hilarious Blockbuster Video version of Halloween 2, where it's just a Blockbuster on the side of the box and it's Halloween.
Yeah,
that's another. It's another shitty tape. That's another.
Yeah, it's a very shitty tape. Anytime I see that tape out of the thrift store, just let it sit on the fucking.
I kept it. I kept it just for basically nostalgia. And hey, who knows? Maybe in fucking 50 years, it'll be $12,000 on eBay. Who knows?
Who knows?
You've probably got a bunch of shit there.
This tape grading market crap. That's all.
Yeah,
garbage.
We talked about that. Nuki.
Yeah, fucking Nuki.
Nuki. Okay,
whatever.
So let's talk about the movie. Okay,
Yeah.
This is a fantastic film. Like I said, it takes the whole slasher genre, turns it on its ear, and it's like an intellectual horror film in a way. Before Hellraiser came out, which was '87. That's where you merged slasher with art film, and you came up with Hellraiser, right? Because Clive Barker, that's just the way he does it. But if you look at I was going through the screenshots of Nightmare on Elm Street because I go to fancaps.net if they have like the whole movies, right? They have a bunch of them, and I'm going to be using them for this show. Wes Craven's photography is gorgeous. I mean, it's just like, and it's the beginning, and it sets the standard for the kind of photography that we will see in all of these Nightmare movies, Well,
wasn't Mac Ahlberg the DP on this movie, I believe?
On this one, no. It was some Jacques Haquin.
Oh, him. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, I keep thinking Reanimator. That was Mac Ahlberg.
Mac Ahlberg. Well, yeah. Mac Ahlberg. I think he had worked. He did work with Wes Craven a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, but he mainly worked with Cunningham. That's why, because Mac Ahlberg did House and
that's right.
House 2. Yeah, a lot of the Cunningham flicks. But yeah, you forgot Jacques Haken. Yeah, he did that.
He did.
He was
the
one that came up with the whole blood fucking, coming out of the bed and everything. That beautiful fucking shot.
Lots. Also, the Freddy coming through the wall, with his head and his claws coming out too. That's like it was kind of like, and it's weird too because the movie when it came out, wasn't quite reviewed favorably. I don't know why, but for some reason they were rating it perfunctorily alongside Friday the 13th, and they were saying that Friday the 13th was a superior movie at the time. They called one of them, I think it was Danny Perry even, who said that Freddy was like a poor man's Jason. I'm like, Jason, I don't know about that. I didn't see it that way because.
Well, what I find funny is you go back to Ebert. Ebert only liked one Freddy movie, and it isn't even officially a Freddy movie.
Oh,
the only movie that Ebert liked was New Nightmare.
That's it. Well, New Nightmare was sort of the beginning of Wes Craven's career of meta horror.
The meta career.
I did enjoy. I did like New Nightmare quite a bit. I thought it was.
I do too, but I'm trying to not get too far off tangent. Yeah. I'm agreeing with you that the original.
He liked
Nightmare on Elm
it
Street
probably
was not
because it was a comment it was a comment on horror movies, right? That was what he liked about it, probably, right?
Yeah, and it had a good enough twist for him to recommend it, but when it came down to. There were a lot of movies that got unfavorably maligned in the 80s because of their status as a slasher.
Yeah.
And it was trendy to shit on on the newest slasher movie. You couldn't give it a good review, even though it was better than your average slasher because it had a good bad guy. I mean,
right.
That's the thing. What Wes Craven did was give us a real bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we had Jason, but he didn't talk. You had Michael Myers. He didn't fucking talk.
Yeah. But that became one of the big problems with the later Freddy movies because he just wouldn't shut up after that. He got more and more dialogue rather than being as menacing. And this is something we really noticed with the first movie. He had very little dialogue. He was basically represented a visual nightmare, a literal visual nightmare for these kids, right? But then they give him a sense of humor, and he starts saying "bitch" at the end of every title of this episode of Froelich. These episodes of Froelich is going to end with the word "bitch," by the way. Just so you know.
You better name episode 2 "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch." That's what you better name episode 2.
No, I don't think I did actually. I think episode 2 is going to be called something else. Well, we'll figure it out when we see it.
But I agree. But it was a.
They started giving Freddy a sense of humor. It started losing its impact. I think that's the thing that Craven complained about and why he did New Nightmare the way he did.
Because it variated a little too far off, and I totally understand. I mean,
it went a little crazy.
He's got the story credit on Dream Warriors, but. Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell rewrote the script.
Yeah.
Because it was originally Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner wrote that script.
I think that Wes Craven was more invested in Nancy's particular trauma, which is why she pops up in the stuff he writes. Oh, I want to mention Jacques Haquin, the cinematographer, had done several movies that I've seen. Actually, I saw The Prize Fighter. I saw They Went That Way and That Away. I saw that in the movie theater when I was a kid. I remember that movie. Galaxy of Terror, which I did not see when I was a kid, obviously. The House Where Evil Dwells. He did Making the Grade with Judd Nelson, the movie before Judd Nelson made Breakfast Club.
The Cannon
movie that was actually pretty good. Lost Empire for Jim Wynorski. I think I have that on video somewhere. He did The Hidden for Jack Shoulder, which is fantastic. A fantastic film. Ooh. To Die For, the vampire movie, not the Nicole Kidman movie.
Oh, okay.
He did Shocker for Wes Craven. And he did The Ambulance for Larry Cohen, which is an awesome film.
Yeah, Ambulance, great movie.
I want to grab that on Blu-ray. I really do.
I got that on Laserdisc.
I want to see a nice transfer of it. I remember played on cable all the time, and they made a big deal about it because Larry Cohen pissed off the unions because he shot the movie right here in New York, and they didn't let movies just be shot in New York back in the 90s, Especially when he wasn't spending any money. He was like doing it all.
You had to go through the team. Well, yeah, but then that was the same thing with The Stuff because The Stuff, I think, was shot in upstate New York, and he didn't get the Teamsters or the unions involved. Yeah. But then there was a good story behind that about how he met with the head of the Teamsters during the making of The Stuff, and when it was all over, the head of the Teamsters, "Go ahead, son, shoot your little movie. I don't care." Like the Teamsters let him alone on that.
Actually, and also what was cool is that Larry Cohen had friends at the New York Post, so they were constantly writing articles about the ambulance, and they were getting a lot of buzz. So he had some, so he was getting a lot of homegrown buzz about the movie because I forget. This was around the time I forget who the company was who eventually released it, but they did not promote it. So he had to get his newspaper writing friends to promote it.
They said The Stuff would have made money if not for the fact when the stuff was released at a time when a movie opened regionally, not nationally, right? And when it opened in its region, there was a blizzard. Nobody could see it.
The Stuff is an awesome film. I gotta show that to Regan. She'll love it.
That is my favorite Larry Cohen film. That is Larry Cohen's best.
Well, The Stuff, I gotta put. Let me see. The Stuff and Q and It's Alive.
Yeah, those are. That's like.
Plus, I watch, on MeTV, because he was in television before he made movies. He created a show called The Invaders, and I watched that on MeTV all the time. Anyway,
back to Wes. Back to Wes.
Mr. Wes Craven, rest in peace, by the way. Also, the source of my first vintage cable box article that I did a few years back. I was originally going to start it off with Porky's. But I had to do Swamp Thing first because Wes Craven had just died. When Wes Craven died, right, and Tobe Hooper died, George Romero died. All these guys, they died, and they were all like very much a part of my formative years growing up.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how it was for me, man. I mean, we're 10 years removed from each other, but we all grew up. You at least had the advantage of growing up, being a teenager in the 80s, going to these. I was a kid, but I still got the same experience. I rented these movies first.
The thing, you're very lucky, though, because I know that a lot of kids were not allowed to see these movies. I knew a lot of, for some reason, religious people, and their families would not allow them to see these movies.
My dad loved
My mother was a big horror nut. She kind of got me into this stuff. And also, like I said, my friend Tina, she not only recorded this for me, she recorded Funhouse, Tobe Hooper movie, and I watched it. I was like, loved it.
Funny enough, another one that Cisco liked.
Cisco liked Funhouse?
Cisco liked Funhouse?
I really like this movie. The quality of horror and the blood coming out of the girl's mouth when she's stabbed in the box. Oh, and also the little psycho parody with the girl from Amadeus. It was wonderful.
Again, you're right. We were lucky, and my kids are lucky because I let them watch horror movies. Of course, I let them watch them supervised.
Well, my daughter's scared to death of horror. She likes really intense stuff. She loves David Lynch, and there's some stuff in there that's pretty nightmarish in his work. But on the whole, she's not big on horror films in that way. But I'm always trying to push horror movies on her. I'm just a terrible father.
My kids love horror movies. They adore them. So, my son, when he got his Blu-ray player, first thing he did, we went to Walmart. We bought, he's got a Freddy collection. He's got the Critters. He's got the Chucky movies. He's got all
Jesus
that
Christ,
stuff.
Critters. Who released Critters?
Yeah.
That was New Line
baby.
Again, right? Yeah, we saw that in the theater. I remember we saw that. I don't know why my mom wanted to see it. I didn't want to see it because I thought it would be a Gremlins ripoff. I didn't know it was going to be goofy.
Oh, that was a great movie. I love it. And you have to remember, what the history books don't tell you, the script for Critters was written first. Critters actually was written before Gremlins. But Critters was made later because nobody wanted to buy the script. But then,
Don Opper didn't have the kind of pull that Chris Columbus did.
Right. But when New Line, of course, when Freddy 1 and 2 made all this money, then they could start putting more projects into production. Critters was one of the first projects that got put into production. And I think it only had a $4 million budget. And it made a shitload of money.
Yeah. That's true.
Can't say that for part 2.
Again, small movies make it's just a fact of life. I noted this a million times in my franchise rewind columns that the first movie is generally the most profitable because the less amount of money is spent on it.
And I think actually, if I'm correct, A Nightmare on Elm Street did not debut nationally. It was a slow rollout film. It started playing regionally. And then it eventually expanded to nationally.
Well, it was.
Now I can't say that for part 2. I don't know that about part 2.
According to the notes here, it didn't. The MPAA refused to release it. It was going to get an X rating unless some cuts were made. So they took out 13 seconds and it got an R rating. I don't really get it myself because when you watch it, it doesn't seem all that. I can't imagine how 13 seconds was going to change a rating.
The MPAA were assholes back in the 80s, dude. Okay, they were anti-horror.
Well, they were also anti-little guy too. Did you ever see the documentary? This film has not been rated. Yeah, it played on IFC. I remember watching it, and they were talking. These filmmakers were talking. I think even Wes Craven might have been in the movie actually talking about problems with the MPAA. Sean Cunningham was. They said that the MPAA had basically they blackballed these smaller studios. That's when it came to ratings. So they would give ratings like Canon. There's a couple of Canon movies that did not deserve to get R ratings, but they did.
Right.
Try to just because they were in the pocket of the studios because the studios paid for the MPAA, right? It's basically their taxes, right?
Nightmare on Elm Street doesn't seem compromised to me in any way. I think from what I understand, their big issue was with Tina's death.
I guess.
That was their.
They slice her stomach.
Because...
She goes flying all over the ceiling. It's a really good effect. Poltergeist is far more intense, though. It's just that Elm Street has the blood.
Dude. Spielberg. That's the magic word we're looking for here. Steven fucking Spielberg.
But that is like...
That's why Poltergeist got a PG.
Yeah. But looking at it, I mean, even now, especially the way how violent these PG-13 movies are in 2023, this is an R rating that does not hold up this long. I mean, yeah, I think somebody says the F word once or twice. It's not loaded with curse words. There's not even any sex to speak of.
Right. And by the way, just for this, there's no point talking about the plot of this movie because, for God's sake, if you're watching or listening to this thing, you know about Freddy, you know about the movies. We're just having a fun discussion about the history and production.
Let's very quickly just do a little bit of the plot. Okay, you got basically Nancy and her friend Tina. And Tina's having dreams, and they come to the conclusion that they're having the same dreams about a man who's got knives for fingers or something like that. Tina dies. Nancy knows she's next on the list. Freddy's going after her. They have all this bizarre imagery in the school. Oh, God, the bizarre imagery is one thing. Then you have Johnny Depp as basically playing Nancy's boyfriend, and then he gets killed in a very twisted nightmare sequence that kind of like rips... Okay, actually... Evil Dead 2 rips it off a little bit because they have a lot of blood and weird shit coming out of the walls in their second movie. But the thing is, there was a rivalry going on between... I don't know, for some reason, Sam Raimi put a Hills Have Eyes poster in the basement of the cabin in Evil Dead 1. So Wes Craven retaliated by having...
Well, not retaliated, returned the favor.
Well, you'd call it whatever. He puts a clip of Evil Dead in the movie when they're watching Evil Dead for some reason. And Johnny Depp has that awesome General Electric boombox, which I have a shot of. And I also have a shot of Nancy not hitting the right button. There's a close-up. I don't know why Wes Craven puts the close-up in, because everybody would be like, bullshit, when they see her hitting the loudness button instead of the rewind and fast-forward button. She's hitting it, and it's right there in the shot. And then later on in Evil Dead 2, I think, they had another poster of a Wes Craven movie, right? In the basement it went on. Because, actually, no, it was Wes Craven that started it, because in The Hills Have Eyes, there's a ripped Jaws poster in the movie.
Oh,
so it was basically Wes Craven saying, Jaws wasn't scary, this is scary. So then Sam Raimi was like, okay, Hills Have Eyes wasn't scary, this is scary. So it just goes on like that.
And then Wes Craven's going, oh, Evil Dead isn't scary, this is scary.
Yeah. So Nancy tries to get to the heart of this. As it turns out, Freddy Krueger was this guy that
child killer.
He was a child killer, and the parents of the children got together with other parents, and they basically hunted him down and killed him. They burned him to death in the boiler room of the high school. I'm assuming, right? Yeah. Even though it's not like is it a high school?
Well,
boiler room?
because they say he's basically, I guess. The remake alludes to this, and I guess they could allude to it in prior movies. He is like, I guess, a janitor, because how else are you going to get close to kids like that?
How else are you going to get close and then also have access to all the wonderful materials that he has?
It makes perfect sense for, them to burn him down in a high school or elementary school's boiler room or something like that. So it makes sense.
So it is another revenge idea, though. It's a Wes Craven revenge thing, but the revenge backfires, and Freddy starts going after the kids that survived, I guess, Nancy being one of them.
Well, not the survivors. He goes after the parents who were responsible for the boiler room massacre. He goes after their kids in their dreams.
Yeah.
Because by the time we get to part 3, Nancy even says, "You are the last of the Elm Street children," which when we get to part 2, it starts getting screwy. But
well, part 2 has. I don't think part 2.
We'll finish up part 1. Let's just finish that up because we'll get to part 2.
Yeah. She does this A-team thing where she starts building weapons at home, and she's drinking coffee, and she's keeping coffee under her bed secretly, and her mom is trying to put her on fucking Valium and stuff. And then there's the wonderful scene in the bathtub, which. If you look at it, I saw a behind-the-scenes photograph of how they actually shot it. It was fantastic. They have like this thing, I don't know. They put her in the bathtub, they put the water, but she's sitting on like a chair in the bathtub, but there's a tank underneath the bathtub that she sinks into. Oh, and that's how they actually I mean, this is these days it's all CGI bullshit. Back then you could actually figure out your way out of creative problems and do it. Right? You have to build something. Nobody builds anything anymore. Now it's all just computers. Somebody showed me a picture of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and the bridge at the end of the movie. Mm. That was all built. They built all that. They built this bridge between these two canyons. It wasn't CGI. It wasn't horse shit. And you can tell.
You said I miss the bygone era, man. I miss it when shit like that, when you put money into it, when shit looked real, when it didn't look like it was filmed on stage.
See, now when you and I, when we go to the movies or we watch a new movie now, we're waiting to see the bullshit. We know there's going to be bullshit.
I'll make it quick. I don't want to get too far off. That's one of the things I didn't like about the fourth Die Hard movie is that it looks like it's shot on a fucking stage.
All right, don't ruin it for me. I'll probably be watching that tomorrow.
I'm not going to ruin it for you. I'm just letting you know. That whole movie looks like it was shot on a fucking stage. That's what I don't like.
There are movies that look that way, and then there are movies that look that way on purpose because they're trying to evoke an old-fashioned memory. There are two movies that come to mind.
Right. One from the heart, one from the heart.
Well, no, yeah, one from the heart. Obviously, you look at that. That's obvious. But that's what Coppola was going for, right? I'm thinking of two movies specifically. I'm thinking of Hook, and I'm thinking of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Both written by the same guy, Jim Hart, but shot by Spielberg and Coppola. And I think they were meant to evoke a kind of classic studio movie. Because back in the day, remember, they had to have everything self-contained, so they had to shoot in the studio. So they built the studio to make it look as real as possible. But there was also that air of, this isn't quite reality, this is a movie. But then when we get to the era of better sound in movies and wireless mics and smaller cameras and smaller lights and faster film stocks, then we moved outside. We did location work. That's how all of that comes together.
Yeah, but in the case of Freddy, it was most of it was there were exterior shots, but the bulk of the movie was shot on sets. But
it was
the movie itself is contained anyway. So the sets don't look fake at all. I mean, especially when your movie is contained.
Yes. Also, I mean, for what he got for 1.1, it looks really good. And also, the photography is so... There are some shots... I never even thought about it before. There's the shots of Tina walking through the hallway when she first meets Freddy. There's the scene... If you notice, like when Nancy is having her little dream in the school, she starts chasing after the body bag that she saw. She walks down the corridor. She bumps into that, no running in the hallway, kid, right? If you look at it, the shot gets progressively creepier and darker. It's like he's turning a tone arm and he's turning it down and it starts to look creepy. Things start off normal and then get creepy. And then there's this weird thing, like at the beginning of the movie practically, where the girls are doing the little jump rope thing, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And then he pans over and it's just a normal movie. It's just a normal day. Isn't that fucking weird? Isn't that fucking weird with the kids?
I've always... that was Wes Craven trying to be surreal, I guess.
I like the mix, though. I mean, what he's doing is he's being surreal. He's creating a dreamlike state in a movie about a guy who kills you in your dreams. And the movie is like a dream in that way. And it ends... I mean, she rigs up these incredible Home Alone traps. This is like Home Alone a little bit,
Well, she eventually figures out how to bring... Well, I guess we got to touch on this. She figures out that she can pull him from the dream world. That as long as she because she grabs onto his hat while she's having a nightmare, and then when she comes out of the nightmare, she has his hat in her hands. So that's when she comes up with the idea, if I just grab him, I can pull him out. Yeah. And she does that, and then they do the whole Home Alone thing. She fucking traps him, sets him on fire, this, that, and everything else. But see, then it gets more surreal. Like here's what I don't understand. She pulls him out, right? And then when he kills her mom,
he grabs her, throws her into the bed, and Dad is there, sees the whole thing, and
then when he covers up the blanket, Freddy disappears, and then all you see is Mom's skeletal corpse raising her hand,
waving goodbye,
floating down into the bed and disappearing. And she goes, "Mother, mother, mother!" I'm like, okay, this movie I love this movie. Don't get me wrong. It just got way too fucking surreal.
Oh, what I got to say, that is a really good visual effect, though, because for a little while in the bedspread, it looks like stormy clouds in there. And then, of course, it was seamless, too. It was seamless.
And when Freddy comes out through the bed, that's like one of the best parts.
Meanwhile, Mother has gone completely paranoid. She barred up the windows and everything. Do we see those bars in the second movie, too?
Yes.
So they kept them on.
Yes, Clu Gallagher is trying to remove the bars.
Right.
In the second film.
Because it kind of makes it look like they're living in a dangerous neighborhood, even though they're not. It's not exactly Assault on Precinct 13 or anything. But, yeah, Dad is there, and then he I don't even know. I guess he fucking lost his mind because in the third movie he's like a big loser of a drunk. But
no longer a cop. I think he's like a security guard.
He's a rent-a-cop. I hate rent-a-cops, too. Little Keith David reference there. So the movie ends, but then it doesn't really end because we get this kind of De Palma ending where everything's fine, the sun's out again, and mom's there and she's waving goodbye, and then suddenly a hand reaches out and grabs her and throws her back in. It's a very cartoon kind of a thing. The lock's on the door, everybody's alive, but oh my God, the door is locked and now the car is driving off out of control, and the movie ends like that. So it's got a second De Palma ending here.
Well, there were like 3 endings shot for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay, so what was the one I'm not?
The other ending, when the car's driving away with all the kids inside, so the original ending, or the one that was filmed, I guess, you don't see the whole Freddy pulling mom through the window. As soon as the car drives away, there's a shot of Freddy behind the wheel with a sinister smile driving the car away.
Ah.
So Wes Craven did have a few problems like ending this thing but he gave it the one final jump scare because you don't expect that fucking ending, but at the same time, you can tell it's a doll that he's pulling through the fucking window.
It's
there's your budgetary.
Well, no, is it possible that he's just playing a little joke on us? Because Wes Craven is clever. I mean, he's a very clever writer, very clever filmmaker. He loves his humor too. So I'm thinking maybe make a whole joke of the ending, and then have like the car drive off, right? And then people won't know what the fuck to believe. Do you think that, here's a question for you. The question of the ages. Do you think Wes Craven intended for this to be a franchise? Because I don't think he did.
No, he did not.
Because up until then, he was not making movies that were sequels. He did make Hills Have Eyes too, though, right? That
was a year later, and I think he got forced into it off some contractual BS that he got roped into. That's the story on the books. Is like, he had to make it. You know what I mean?
But he did make it, though.
I don't know. Oh, but it's a garbage fucking
And he
movie,
brought Michael Berryman back. And
dude,
actually,
the movie has flashbacks from the dog's point of view.
I know. But I remember thinking, even as a horror sequel or whatever it was, because remember, conventional wisdom is sequels are not as good as the original. Even for a horror sequel, this wasn't terrible. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It actually looked really good, and it was shot for a very low budget too. It looked good.
Says you, man. Fuck that movie.
I thought it did. I thought it looked great.
Yeah, I tried. That movie was.
It's just, Wes Craven is now one of these because he didn't like it, I guess, when it came out, but he did make the movie. I try not to waste my time on things I don't want to do. So. But if I do happen to do something, even if it falls apart like my movie did fall apart, I'll figure out a way to get it out there to be seen.
Well, in this case, Nightmare on Elm Street became a big hit, and of course, New Line, they have the rights to it, and they want to do sequels. And Wes, they approached Wes, and he said, "No, this was a one and done. If you want to do it, go right ahead. But I ain't doing it. I'm not touching it." And then they threw it together, I believe, and the story goes, it came out damn near a year to the fucking day after the first one.
That's
damn near a year to the day.
Yeah,
because New Line could turn it around real quick. Like they were a small company. You hire the right people, i.e. Jack Shoulder, because he was already working for the company. That man could shit out a movie real quick.
Yeah, Jack Shoulder, most of his movies were for New Line, weren't they?
Yeah.
He did this. We did a couple of Jack Shoulder movies for Extreme Cinema, me and my friend Andrew. The ones we did were 1201, and The Hidden, and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which I'm going to now talk about with you. Well, first, before we start, I just... wrap up on Nightmare on Elm Street. I want to talk about the cast a little bit because they're wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Now, John Saxon had been in everything back in those days. He was a bad guy in a lot of movies. He was a bad guy in a lot of cop stuff back in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s kind of stuff.
He was doing a lot of exploitation around this time though. That's why he did Nightmare on Elm Street, because he hadn't had a high profile movie in front. I think the high profile film he did was Enter the Dragon, of course. Mm-hmm. But then you've got that 11-year stretch where he was doing nothing but exploitation films.
Right. And then you have Ronee Blakley,
who I don't remember her from anything.
She was in she was in a Walter Hill movie called The Driver, one of Walter Hill's earliest movies called The Driver.
Oh, good movie, dude.
She was nominated for an Oscar for Robert Altman's Nashville. She's a singer and a composer and a bunch of other things. She wrote a song for Linda Ronstadt. I mean, she was into songwriting as well, but she had disappeared, I guess, after a few years, and just, I don't know, maybe Wes Craven gave her a call. Hey, you want to be in this movie? She's like, fuck it, why not? Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah, and then she did a Tales from the Dark Side episode.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah.
Now Heather Langenkamp, from what I remember, I think she was
everybody was unknown at this point. nobody had done anything, I think, at this point. Like,
sorry,
because all these kids were like, you got to remember, Johnny Depp, he went with his friend, for cast. I'm trying to remember the friend he went with.
Heather Langenkamp's actual first work was for Coppola. She worked on The Outsiders and Rumblefish, but her scenes were deleted.
Ah, okay. Well, there you go.
So Nightmare on Elm Street was her very first official movie.
And same with Johnny Depp. That was his first official movie, too.
That's right. And Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp had been around for years, and then I don't know what happened. Maybe in the third season of Jump Street, he suddenly becomes big because he was in Edward Scissorhands, became a big star.
Crybaby, I believe Crybaby. But some of the other cast in this movie is going to forget. We got, of course, Amanda Weiss. She popped up in a few.
She shows up in Better Off Dead. She was Woody's girlfriend on Cheers for a couple of episodes. A bunch of stuff.
I remember she popped up in a Drew Carey show episode, one of the Drew Carey episodes. Yeah. I mean, she was getting some steady work for a while. And, of course, in the movie, he's credited as Nick Corey, but now he goes by his given name, Stu Garcia. He's done a bunch of fucking movies.
Jesus Garcia, and he shows up a little bit for 5 seconds. You can see him in New Nightmare.
Yeah, he's in the funeral scene.
Yeah, he's a producer now. I mean, like a lot of them are producers. Heather Langenkamp is a producer too. She has her own company.
Oh, she's in special effects.
Yeah. Her husband actually makes special effects, which is why Wes Craven, I guess, based her real life on her fictional life.
And so, I mean, this movie had a great cast, but then now we can move along.
Wait, one second. Robert Englund.
Go ahead. Robert Englund.
Who I am Facebook friends with also.
The great Bob Englund. I've met the man. He is the sweetest, most kindest.
He is a really nice guy. He is a nice guy.
He is the nicest man you will ever meet.
I want to point out that before I saw him in Nightmare on Elm Street, I saw him in V, the miniseries.
I unfortunately
NBC.
only ever saw him when I first saw him.
Actually,
like everybody else.
He plays one of the visitors, but he's a good guy.
He plays Willie.
Yes. He's Willie, I guess. I don't know quite what's... Actually, Robert Englund, wasn't he also in a Woody Allen film? I could have sworn he was. Let me see. Well, he was in Stay Hungry, which was a Rob Rafelson movie starring Jeff Bridges, Sally Field, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was in...
I'm gonna raise you one, and you don't even need to look this up. My name's Buck, and I'm here to fuck.
What, Kill Bill?
No, Eaten Alive, no. Toby Hooper.
Oh, well, I was thinking of Kill Bill because that's what he says.
Yeah, Kill Bill ripped that off, man. Fucking Tarantino ripped that off because he's a big... Tarantino flat out said he loves Eaten Alive. That's like his favorite Toby Hooper film. And, of course, when they gave him the opportunity, he ripped off the line from Bob Englund. He said, my name is Buck, and I'm here to fuck.
Oh, cool.
Bob Englund popped up as Buck in Toby Hooper's Eaten Alive. So he was in that. He popped up, shit. This one fucking road movie that he did. Something in Bobby. Oh, my God, I got to look
I think of Buster and Billy.
Buster and Billy.
That was his first movie. Yeah. That was 1974. And he didn't get much work. He really didn't get much work. He got, he worked 74, 75, 76. Very scattered. He had a very scattered thing. Mainly just sort of walk-on, kind of very quick bit parts. Like he was in A Star Is Born for 5 seconds, and he doesn't even get a credit. He was in Dead and Buried, that great movie with Melanie Anderson that I love. He was in Galaxy of Terror, which was also shot by Jacques Hatkin.
Yep.
What is this? This looks like something. Oh, he's in Big Wednesday, which is a John Milius movie about surfing.
Yeah, I know the surfing movie. Yeah.
Right, with Jan Michael Vincent and William Catt, right? And who else?
Yep.
Patty Darbanville and people like that. Don't Cry, It's Only Thunder, a Vietnam movie, Vietnam War movie. And then after that, Freddy takes over, basically. He gets to direct his own movie, 976 Evil, which I remember. I think I might have seen that in the theater. If it's the one that I remember with Stephen Jeffries. Yes, it is. Yeah, I saw that in the theater.
Yeah, Stephen Jeffries.
And it was written by Brian Helgeland, who got an Oscar for L.A. Confidential and also wrote for Friday the 13th this year. There's a lot of...
Well, and he also did the screenplay for Nightmare 4.
That's right.
Him and, Bob Englund got together because Brian Helgeland did the script for Part 4. He liked working with him, so he said,
Brian
Helgeland,
I have also, his start in the slasher films, that's where he started.
He did a lot of good slasher flicks before he won an Oscar,
he did
so there
also,
you go.
Okay, Englund was also in the Dwight Little Phantom of the Opera with Jill Schoelen, which I really want to see. I never got to see it.
Well, he directed that, didn't he?
No, that was Dwight Little who directed it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Dwight Little did it. My bad.
And he's the guy who did he did Mark for Death, Rapid Fire. Inexplicably Free Willy 2.
Hey, man, studio picture. Why not? You get paid, right?